All right, so I am recording this session. It will get posted to the RFP website by the end of this week. You are here for the Bidders Conference for the C2L PHL request for proposals for providers for summer of 2026. Know that questions that have been submitted so far to the procurement@jevs.org email are already kind of incorporated into the presentation today, but we'll make sure to include in the publicly posted question and answers document that will also be on the website later this week. And for today's session, I will have some time towards the end to do some questions and answers. So please know that I won't be taking questions throughout the presentation. Please feel free to use the chat though. If you don't want to forget a question, you want to make sure that it gets dropped. We'll also be downloading the chat from today's session to try to answer as many questions as we can over the course of the next couple of days. As I shared, we've got a pretty big size group, so we're going to use the chat to manage questions and answers. Please make sure that you're keeping yourselves muted. We want to manage the background noise because I am going to take us through the entire RFP in hopes to make sure that your organizations can determine if you all want to apply to become a C2L PHL provider. For those that don't know me, my name is Kimberly McCaffrey. I am the Senior Vice President of Youth and Young Adult Services here at JEVS Human Services. I am responsible for the team who manages and operates the Career Connected Learning intermediary contract on behalf of Philadelphia Works, the city's Office of Children and Families, and the school district. As we think about our RFP opportunity, I want to highlight some of the key dates for this funding opportunity. The deadline to submit questions is tomorrow, or sorry, not tomorrow, is Thursday the 22nd. All questions should be submitted to procurement@jevs.org and will be included in the publicly posted Q&A that will be posted to the RFP website later this week. The deadline for the notice of intent to apply, we're really encouraging folks to submit that first step by Friday, January 23rd at 5 p.m. because this link does get you the proposal submission link. We're really encouraging folks to do that by the end of this week so that our JEVS team can ensure that we have enough folks to review all the proposals. But also we want to make sure that you all are leaving yourselves enough time if any technical support is needed and for whatever reason you don't get the application link, that you have some time to reach out to us. So would just flag that while we will accept notices of intent after the 23rd, really would encourage you to do that by the end of this week to make sure that there's no technical issues and that you get the application link that you will need to submit your proposal. And then of course, Monday, February 2nd is the deadline to submit full applications. We'll talk more in detail about the process of how all that gets done here later in the presentation. So in terms of Career Connected Learning, right, this is a coordinated investment, as I said, by the City of Philadelphia, specifically the Office of Children and Families, Philadelphia Works, and the School District of Philadelphia. We work closely with the Office of Career and Technical Education and the Office of Post-Secondary Readiness. In 2024, these entities came together to invest in an intermediary and a full system for Career Connected Learning. This is basically the evolution of the summer employment system here in the city. So those of you that may be on the call that are familiar with Work Ready or PhilaJobs, right? If you've been in the city a long time, C2L PHL is the current iteration of summer youth employment for the city of Philadelphia. There, as you can imagine, are a lot of folks involved in this ecosystem, right? Our main public funders are those that we've talked about. JEVS Human Services, the organization that I and our team work for and is operating this procurement. We serve as the fiscal and contracting intermediary for C2L PHL. We work with Foundations, Inc., who is the capacity building provider for C2L. Their primary constituent, along with JEVS, are providers who are funded to operate C2L PHL programs. They support JEVs in making sure that we have the highest program quality and that our practitioners at organizations like yours are supported and prepared to be able to run and operate C2L programs. And then currently, our C2L PHL provider network is an ecosystem of about 50 nonprofit organizations that have worked with JEVs in the summer of 2025 and will continue to work with us as we get into the summer of 2026. So this opportunity will add to that provider network. And then of course, we wouldn't be here without our placement site partners. Those are going to be your nonprofit, for-profit, small, medium, large businesses who are either engaged with the system to offer job shadowing, field trips, panels about occupations, may also be internship sites that are hosting young people for day-to-day tasks, things like that. And so this system currently serves about 8,000 young people in the summer. And we're looking at this opportunity to try to scale and offer some more opportunities for young people across the city. C2L PHL, as it relates to what is managed by JEVs, really focuses on the middle of the city of Philadelphia's C2L PHL continuum. And so our programs are really focused on career preparation and career awareness. And for sure, sorry guys, I just want to remove some of the drawing on the PowerPoint here. Really looking at how we're teaching young people about what they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what they're bad at, what are the different types of jobs that they could do based on that info. And of course, the most important part for us, young people are getting paid for these opportunities. And so they're earning a stipend along the way. As we talk about young people, what we're talking about is young people who are 12 to 24 years old. This RFP is really focused on prioritizing young people who are 13 to 18 years old and the following priority populations. So our focus is young people who are juvenile justice involved, who are involved in the child welfare system through foster care or that have aged out of foster care, young people who have disabilities, and youth who are pregnant or parenting. Note, you should have seen this in the RFP, right? 20% of youth who are enrolled in C2L PHL programs should be DHS involved. We manage this both through report from young people in their application process, but also work with the city's Office of Children and Families to do a match with Philadelphia's DHS system. And so for those organizations that might not be directly connected to some of these young people already, note that our application system does flag DHS involved young people based on a match with the city of Philadelphia. As we talk about summer programming, we're talking about recruitment that happens between March and May, programming, eligibility and matching to placement sites happening in May and June, and ultimately program that runs June through August. Programs must be either 6 weeks or 8 weeks under C2L PHL. We're offering 120 hours minimally to young people over those 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And that 120 hours encompasses 90 hours of work-based learning, which is your internship component, project-based learning or service learning component, and 30 hours of professional development, which must include skill building, career awareness, and financial literacy education. And so providers have the discretion of setting those schedules, right? What time of day, which days of the week. But ultimately, when we work with providers who are awarded, or programs must be offering at least 120 hours over 6 weeks or 8 weeks. All experiences funded through this opportunity will be stipend based. Young people will have the opportunity to earn at least $1,320 or $1,500 depending on the type of experience. Most young people in the C2L PHL system for the summer are earning $1,320 as their stipend. Those stipends are paid by JEVs as the intermediary and are paid out bi-weekly during the program. It's a fixed amount, so either young people are earning their stipend or are not, but it is part of the provider's role in the system to approve or reject those payments in partnership with JEVS that happens through our designated electronic database. All right, so let's dig in a little bit to the requirements of the RFP. Just a reminder, I see some questions starting to come in the chat. I'll take questions and answers at the end, but feel free to use the chat so that you don't forget your questions. Nonprofit organizations who can demonstrate at least a year or more experience serving young people in Philadelphia are eligible to apply. Know that organizations will have to demonstrate their ability to start up and implement recruitment efforts in March of 2026. So it is a pretty quick turnaround in terms of this procurement opportunity to start up. We're open to new providers. So these are organizations who, or the organizations who operated C2L/PHL programs during summer 2025 are not eligible to apply. All of those organizations, if anybody is on the call, note that your org is already up for contract renewal with JEVS. There's no need to apply to this opportunity because we will work with organizations to ensure contracts are renewed and all that good stuff here over the next month. If we have any providers who operate OCF, the Office of Children and Families, funded out of school time or OST programs, know that your organization is not eligible to apply for a currently funded OST site, right? OST programs funded by OCF are eligible to apply for a different site, so a different location, and anyone who is operating an OST specialized program is eligible to apply for this opportunity, but if awarded, your OST specialized contract would be paused while you're running a C2L program operated through a contract with JEVS. So again, C2L providers who operated in summer of 25 are not eligible to apply for increased funding for new programs. Those organizations should be working directly with JEVS and do not need to apply through this opportunity. If your organization was not a provider in summer of 2025, we welcome your proposal. Either bucket, if you are operating OST, know that you have those additional caveats in terms of what site, and if you would have to pause your contract with the OST intermediary in order to run a C2L program if awarded. All awardees are going to have to be tax exempt under the 501c3 codes with the IRS. And your organization must be in good financial standing and meet the insurance requirements that are listed in Appendix D of the RFP. I believe it is D. Note that when you do your proposal, you will be required to upload multiple documents as it relates to your financial standing, whether or not it is a 990 document, your financial statements, either audited or unaudited, a copy of your IRS determination letter. And so please make sure that you're reviewing the RFP in full. The questions that are asked on the application are included in the appendices, and so it gives you an opportunity to see what questions you're going to be asked to answer and what documents you're going to be required to upload. In terms of funding availability, the contract and how payments flow from JEVS to awardees, this RFP is ultimately going to lead to the selection of at least 3 to 5 organizations. Again, we're looking to build on our current provider ecosystem. And so for those that have been familiar with previous RFPs, right, this is going to lead to fewer awards. We are already planning to continue to work with the nonprofits that operated programs in summer of 2025. Award preference will be given to providers who are demonstrating programs that operate in these three specific parts of the city, right? So Southwest Philadelphia, Olney, and Northeast Philadelphia. These are locations in the city where we received a high number of applicants from summer of 2025 and had fewer organizations already operating in those zip codes. Again, looking to serve young people who are 13 to 18, right? As a reminder, C2L PHL programming can support youth as young as 12 and as old as 24. But we're looking to really prioritize our high school age young people through this opportunity. You do not have to support that whole age range, right? 12 to 24 or 13 to 18. You can propose to serve only certain ages within that. And of course, any organization who's demonstrating their ability to work with those DHS involved young people will be given preference as we work through awards. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a little bit as we talk about the evaluation process for awards. All contracts will be cost reimbursement. So this means applicants will be responsible for incurring costs, submitting documentation to JEVS on a monthly basis in order to receive reimbursement. Budgets are not required for this proposal submission. The cost per slot is included, but if awarded, we will develop a line item budget with all grantees, and invoices will have to align with that budget. And again, come into JEVS on a monthly basis. Once invoices are approved from JEVS, it takes approximately 45 days for payment to be issued to providers. So just want to keep that in mind in terms of your organization's operations and how this could or might not work for whether or not you should apply for this opportunity. The summer program cost per slot is $1,352 for providers. This is the cost per slot that goes directly into provider contracts, and so could include costs like staffing, rent, utilities, supplies, can also include supportive services for young people, so things like trans passes, or help with vital documents if you're paying for birth certificates or IDs to help young people get connected, and could also include things like program materials or training materials. So not an exhaustive list, but that provider operating cost can go to a good amount of costs. It does not include the youth payment. So the cost for the stipends to young people is already included in the budget that JEVS has with the city. Philadelphia Works in the School District. So this $1,352 is truly the cost that goes to an organization that serves as a provider for C2L PHL. Note that organizations must propose to serve at least 25 youth in order to be considered an eligible applicant. So any organization proposing to serve less than 25 will be considered ineligible for this opportunity. This is a contract that would be for summer program only. And so as some of you are familiar, there are programs that run under the C2L ecosystem in the fall and in the spring. This opportunity is strictly for summer programming only. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the intermediary and capacity building provider. So the intermediary responsibilities, that is our team here at JEVS, we are responsible for ensuring that there are streamlined processes and protocols. That's going to be your application processes, your eligibility processes, how young people get paid, and is universal to the whole C2L PHL ecosystem. So if awarded, you would be required as a provider to align with those processes and protocols. We manage a web presence for C2L PHL along with the system funders, right? Philadelphia Works, the city, and the district. We maintain a process for placement site agreements, including requirements at that level as well. As shared already, we manage youth compensation, so paying out those stipends to young people. We do support with business engagement and are a part of the process in terms of how placement sites are signed off to participate with C2L. And as you can imagine, spend a good amount of time offering training and technical assistance for the provider ecosystem to make sure that we are doing everything that we're being contracted to do. We do support in fundraising efforts and trying to bring more dollars to C2L PHL, just knowing the interest we've received in the last 2 years for these types of opportunities and how many opportunities are actually funded at this moment. Responsible for performance and outcomes reporting, both at the provider level and at the system level. And we coordinate regularly with Foundations Inc., the capacity building provider, to ensure organizations are connected to professional development resources and other opportunities. As we talk about foundations, they support providers by offering resources and training as it relates to program quality and program standards. They work with field experts and have a resource library. The link is included in these slides, which will be posted on the website. That resource library is open to the public, so feel free to check that out regardless. They are going to offer professional development opportunities, again, for our practitioners, for the provider staff. And they work closely with JEVS, with Philadelphia Works the City, and the OST intermediary to ensure that we're assessing where there might be any gaps in the system and ensuring that we are helping providers do the best quality work. All right, so let's touch base on providers' scope and responsibilities. So in terms of outreach, recruitment, and retention, JEVS will work with providers to process applications and enrollments, right? Providers are responsible for meeting their established enrollment targets. All C2L providers must use the designated C2L PHL application and enrollment system. We currently have a provider portal that is linked to Launchpad, which is a data system that is built on Salesforce. Youth have a portal connected to C2L PHL, providers have a portal, and JEVS as the intermediary has our platform that gets connected in all the ways. That data system is used for application, enrollment, tracking time and attendance, tracking pay approval, and so all C2L PHL providers are required to utilize that data system. Awardees are going to have to adhere to the enrollment timeline that is established by JEVS. You'll have to work with youth who are known and unknown to your organizations. The summer application system is citywide and open, and so young people have the opportunity to review details about all C2L programs and rank between 1 to 3, could be up to 5 programs that they might be interested in getting connected to. And so through that process, you'll be able to work with young people that are known to your entities already, but will also be required to explore opportunities for young people who might be learning about your organization through the C2L PHL application process. You'll have to work with young people to understand how to get connected and how to apply. Of course, JEVS helps with some of that technical assistance and training about the youth portal, but providers are required to help young folks also complete their applications. And the big one that I think often people overlook is that providers are required to help in collecting and submitting necessary documents, any corrections that might be needed to applications as part of the application period. So all young people are required to submit proof of ID, proof of social security number, and a completed W-9. And so providers are going to be expected to support young people in that process. Finally, as it relates to ensuring that we are filling all of the opportunities, providers are responsible for regular in-person outreach events in order to ensure that programs are getting filled up. We don't want to leave any opportunities on the table. Again, we're talking about young people 12 to 24. Providers are not required to serve the entire age range. Priority and preference will be given to award proposals that suggest that they're going to work with young people who are 13 to 18 and youth who are DHS involved. Again, must work with the C2L PHL portal as the application mechanism for summer of 2026. In terms of enrollment, eligibility, and assessment, know that you will have to have dedicated staff who are responsible for supporting with that documentation and determining whether or not young people are eligible. Again, youth are going to have to upload proof of ID age, proof of social security number, and a completed W-9. And we will continue to prioritize our DHS involved youth, as I shared earlier. Those young people are flagged in our portal system, and we are working with the city in order to match young people that are part of the DHS system for the city of Philadelphia. The only exception to residents, right, we're working with young people who are Philadelphia residents, is if the young person is DHS involved and they are placed outside of the city. So a young person who has a foster care case here in the city of Philadelphia, but is in placement in Montgomery County, would still be allowed to participate, even though technically they are residing outside of the city of Philadelphia. All right, so supportive services are going to be those services that enable participants to fully participate. The most common type of supportive service that's offered through C2L PHL is transportation and is support with that documentation, right? So if a young person has, say they use their report card to get connected to the program, but while they're in C2L during the summer, your organization wants to help that young person get an ID. C2L dollars as a part of the provider budget can absolutely be used to pay for those ID costs or the birth certificate costs. Sometimes school records also have a cost associated with them if your students are older and out of school already. And so for folks that are awarded, there will be an opportunity for funds to be budgeted for C2L contracts, but we also encourage folks to have local organization partnerships that can help with some of these things as well. And then work-based learning and employer engagement, right? So I shared a little bit earlier, providers must offer at least 90 hours of work-based learning for summer participants. This from our end typically includes internships, service learning, or project-based learning. Internships are typically those opportunities where young people are being placed at a business or at another organization. Service learning and project-based learning are typically those opportunities that are cohort-based and are being facilitated by the provider. Providers will collaborate with Philadelphia Works, the city, the district, and JEVS as we recruit placement sites, manage clearances and background checks, and ensure quality. And so JEVS does have a dedicated clearances vendor that we work with, that we run supervisor clearances for placement sites, as well as young people if needed. And so if awarded, we will make sure to train and give access to that clearances platform for providers. And we'll make sure that folks are fully trained and understand who requires clearances when and how to do that. In terms of professional development, in the summer, you must offer at least 30 hours of professional development for summer participants. This can be skill building, can be career exposure, can be financial literacy. We're looking at how are we building those muscles? How are we teaching young people? How are we really increasing their network, making sure they understand what's out there? This is, again, at the discretion of providers. And so we have some folks that are doing this in person, some who are doing it virtually, some who are using a hybrid method. Some providers also incorporate asynchronous modules for young people to complete professional development. This is one where there's flexibility at the provider level as it relates to program design and what works best for young people depending on what your program is targeting and focused on. It does not always have to be facilitated by provider staff, right? This could be a place where you're working with additional instructors or you're having businesses come into your program to facilitate some of these partnerships and some of this information for young people. So there's not a designated curriculum associated with C2L PHL, but our team is available to help and support along with the foundations team for organizations who are looking for some best practices and additional options as it relates to professional development. In terms of outreach and comms, the provider will have to abide by C2L PHL branding and communication guidelines that are set forth by Philadelphia Works the City District and JEVS. The brand guidelines and design elements and templates will be shared with providers who are awarded, and all outreach and program materials must follow the C2L PHL brand guidelines. And we look for providers to inform JEVS of any relevant media events, press releases, and publicity in advance, as well as any regular meetings, so we can ensure that, as shared earlier, the ecosystem for C2L is pretty large, so we want to make sure that we're coordinated and folks are in the loop about activities happening. All right, so responsibilities and requirements. In terms of staffing, providers must designate at least one staff as the primary lead and contact to ensure successful implementation of the scope of work. The provider must have the capacity and infrastructure to support all functions of these regulations and requirements. Key responsibilities include the contract administration, tracking expenses, preparing invoices, and all of the items in the scope of work that we just talked through. The provider is going to be responsible for hiring, onboard, and training new staff as needed for the program. Again, the JEVS team, as the intermediary, will host onboarding and training, both about the rules and regulations as well as the data systems involved with C2L PHL, but providers are also going to be responsible for some of those processes internally as you hire and train staff as well. In terms of data and technology requirements, folks have to be proficient with data entry and management of off-the-shelf or cloud-based systems. As I shared, the C2L PHL portal is built on a Salesforce system, and so we are looking for organizations who have staff that can work within those systems. The provider is required to have data security policies and protocols that align with industry standards and utilize software and operating systems compatible with Office 365. Our team predominantly uses SharePoint as a mechanism to share forms and documents with providers. And so whilst organizations don't necessarily have to be using the Microsoft suite as an organization, so even if you're using Google, for example, your teams are still going to have to be able to access and understand how to utilize the Office 365 suite, since that is what JEVS Human Services uses. The provider will need to demonstrate their capacity and use of IT industry standard practices. And so you've got some items listed here and in the RFP. This will be a part of the proposal submission. You'll be asked to share a little bit more about your organization with us. And there are detailed requirements for these items in the contract for those that are awarded. In terms of performance and data management, again, required to use an electronic system of record to document and report outputs and outcomes for program operations. That is the C2L PHL portal. Files will be stored there electronically and maintained in alignment with local, state, and federal rules and regs. The provider will have to adhere to weekly data entry deadlines to ensure timeliness of payment to young people. So providers are required to track and enter time and attendance by 5 p.m. each Monday during the summer session. Not to say that it has to wait until Mondays, but Mondays and 5 p.m. are absolutely the big deadline on our end. Our C2L PHL portal will give awardees an opportunity to build a schedule for young people in the system, and The system will assume that young people complete those hours. Providers are responsible for going into the system to edit if a young person does more or less hours compared to what was planned. And again, to approve or reject whether or not they have earned their stipend every other week, again, Mondays by 5 p.m. The provider success will be measured aligned with the criteria outlined in the RFP. There are a couple of tables in the program performance section that addresses data integrity, completeness, survey completion, outputs, and outcomes. For the sake of time this afternoon, I'm not going to walk through all of those metrics, but for organizations who are awarded, we will walk through those in detail for sure. If you have questions about those, please feel free to send them into the email address. All right, so responding to the RFP. The first step that everyone has to take if you plan to apply is to submit a notice of intent that is available on the JEVS website. The notice of intent is required in order to apply because it links to a unique application link for your organization. If you visit this website that's on my screen, that's how you will be able to submit the NOI. Again, strongly encouraged by this Friday, January 23rd. NOIs after that date will be accepted. However, it could delay the application link getting to your organization, and JEVS is not going to be responsible for applications that are late for NOIs that are submitted after January 23rd. So would encourage you to submit NOIs by this date. As outlined in the RFP, an NOI submission does not commit your organization to bid. So even if you do the NOI and decide later down the road that your organization is actually not interested and will choose not to apply, that is okay. The NOI does not commit your organization to submit a proposal. Know that if you have submitted the NOI, the email that you get can be shared with other people in your organization so that you all have access to the same application. Applications are due Monday, February 2nd, 2026 by 5 p.m. Applications must be submitted via the unique link connected to the NOI. The application link will be sent within 24 hours of the NOI submission to the contact person who submits the NOI. The application email will come from the JEVS procurement team at this email address listed on my screen. If for some reason you did not receive a link, please email procurement@jevs.org for support. And again, if others need access to the proposal to help with completing the questions, you can forward that application link and multiple people from your organization can work within that link. Do not submit another NOI because it will create another separate second application for your organization. Again, applicants who complete the NOI after January 23rd will still be allowed to submit an application, but this could cause delay. So again, we're strongly encouraging folks to submit their NOI by the end of this week so that you can ensure that you get your application link and don't have any technical issues. In terms of evaluation, each application will be reviewed by at least 2 reviewers. Proposals will be evaluated and scored based on the quality and thoroughness of the submission and the extent to which each component of the RFP have been addressed. Applicants will have to demonstrate experience, plans for serving the priority populations, and again, preference will be given for organizations who plan to operate programs in the 3 zip codes listed, serving youth 13 to 18, and serving youth who are involved in DHS. That preference will be included in points within sections 1, 2, and 4 listed on your screen at this point. And so know that if your organization does propose to operate a program in alignment with any of our preference areas, those that will already be reviewed and calculated within the points per each section listed here. And so each proposal has 4 sections The first section about experience and past performance, the second section about plans for implementation, third section about administrative, fiscal, and technical capacity, and then the final section about additional support, which is where uploads for things like letters of support, organizational charts, 990s, etc., will be uploaded to the system. If necessary, JEVS, the city and Philadelphia Works in the District, do reserve the right to select providers regardless of scores or rank according to the needs of the system, including but not limited to program location and services to the priority populations. Again, key dates for this funding opportunity. Final deadline for questions is this Thursday, January 22nd at 5 p.m. Questions can be submitted to procurement@jevs.org. The notices of intent we're encouraging by this Friday, January 23rd by 5 p.m. And then the final application proposals are due Monday, February 2nd, 5 p.m. I'm going to jump. I have a bunch of questions here in the chat, so I'm going to try to answer some questions while we have folks on the call today. The only caveat that I will give y'all, right, I'm going to answer questions to the best of my ability. I encourage you to look at the publicly posted question and answers that will be on the JEVS website where the RFP was posted and this recording will get posted. Any answers that we provide in writing will supersede answers that I give this afternoon. Right? So I will do my best not to answer questions if I know I need some follow-up from our team internally, and or if I know we might not have enough time to answer some questions that are in the chat because we do have a good amount. But I'm going to start at the top and work my way down to try to answer some things this afternoon. So the first question, can students rotate through placements or do they have to be placed in one location for the 90 hours? We do have some young people who rotate through placements, but that's more, they're doing the same task at each placement site. And so this really gets into program design and what is considered a placement site. Is it that your organization is on site at that location? It might be that the organization that you work for is actually serving as the placement site. That's where the supervisors for those young people are coming and you all are rotating. And so young people are allowed to rotate. It just gets into the logistics of who the supervisor is and who has to sign off on the placement site agreement. And then I saw that 8 to 12 of the career hours should happen before the placement. What does that typically entail? Is this something that is implemented after or during the matching portion of the process? Yes, so of the 30 professional development hours, we're looking for at least 8 of those professional development hours to happen prior to the work-based learning component. This is typically what happens the very first week of C2L PHL programs. And so it does not happen during the matching portion. It happens once young people are already matched, confirmed eligible, enrolled, and have an associated placement site. And so this is typically your skill building, your career readiness that is going to ensure that the young person is ready for the experience in terms of their work-based learning component. Next question, our program runs from August to December and is for ages 18 to 35. Is there a program that would be better suited for our training program? I can follow up with that one offline because again, this is going to be for summer only programming between June and August, right? Recruitment starting March through May. And so we are looking at summer programming for this funding opportunity. Can you clarify what constitutes project-based learning? For example, would a program that focuses on mastering a scientific technique, data collection, data analysis, and presentation of findings be eligible? Must there be an internship or work component? So like your example would be considered project-based learning. There's a good amount that can be encompassed in project-based learning or service learning. not all C2L PHL participants have to be placed in a more traditional internship where they are at a business site, are being assigned tasks and duties. And so it sounds like just from the details that are available there, potentially would be considered project-based learning. When students are applying for placements through the youth portal, can the provider ask for specific application requirements? For example, career interest questions or statements of interest. The C2L PHL application cannot be customized by provider, so it is the same across the board. When they're applying, they are asked already a set designated of questions, which at this point does not include them having to upload statements of interest or any type of letter to a provider about why they want to apply. And then, is there a recommended cohort size for project-based learning? There is, especially if you're trying to think about it from supervisor requirements. And so we require supervisors for project-based learning or service learning. It is 1 to 15 young people. For internships, you're looking at 1 supervisor to 10 young people. Again, that's going to be supervisors during the work-based learning component. And so you might have provider staff that are managing multiple cohorts or doing the data entry for multiple cohorts. But as it relates to cohort size and supervisors, those are the ratios we're talking about. We do have cohorts, depending on the project, that are bigger than that 15. We have some that are running multiple cohorts at the same placement site location. And so just gets into how many supervisors are required to be on site for that programming opportunity. How does partnerships with the school districts work as far as space and marketing to students? And so in terms of space, we work with the Office of Student Life. So we follow the district's processes for requesting space at school district buildings. And so if awarded and you do not already have a designated space, this would be something that we would ensure you get connected to the Office of Student Life in terms of requesting school space. In terms of marketing and outreach to students, there is C2L PHL collateral that's dropped off at all SDP high schools. We work, like I said, closely with the Office of Career and Technical Education, the Office of Post-Secondary Readiness. And so there's general C2L PHL information that goes out in email blasts from the district that's on the district's website. We're working with principals and school-based staff to make sure that they understand the process of how young people get connected. And at the same time, we're managing capacity, right? We're talking about opportunities for approximately 8,000 students. And so we want young people to know that these opportunities, that we get twice as many applications as we do have spots in terms of resources. And so making sure that they are informed and looking at lots of different opportunities for the summer. Does responsible conduct of research training count as part of their work or project-based learning? Jasmine, I'm not exactly sure I understand your question. So if you could follow up in the procurement email to send a few more details about what you mean, that would be helpful. But there's a pretty big umbrella as it relates to project-based learning. And so I think that that's just one that I'll need a little bit more information from you in order to fully answer your question. How do we ensure we'll serve 20% DHS involved youth if we can be sure who will apply? This is currently not a data point we collect on our program participants. Yeah, so this, like I said, is something that we do based on report in the application process, as well as a data match with the city of Philadelphia. And so as providers are reviewing applications of young people who have ranked them, that information is flagged in the portal for providers to see who is being considered DHS involved based on that match. We're also, as a system, working more closely with DHS stakeholders, right? So JEVS will be doing some information sessions and identifying some champions at each of the community umbrella agencies. We already do some application sessions and information sessions with probation and family court. We're starting to do some application support with the Achieving Independence Center. So there are, as we are coming up on operating our third summer as the intermediary, there's also more that's happening at the JEVS level to increase the number of applicants that we have that are DHS involved. And then I see, please confirm that if your organization was funded last year, a new application and NOI is not required. That is correct. If your organization operated a C2L PHL program contracted by JEVS Human Services in 2025, you do not need to go through this RFP process. Please get connected to your program analyst and our team here at JEVS. We are working through contract renewals for folks that were funded in 2025. I see if I can follow up as well in regard to programming opportunities for 18 to 35-year-olds. Yes, I can. There's lots of other places to get connected in terms of workforce development in general. So happy to provide some resources there. Just please make sure to follow up in the procurement@jevs.org email so that we do not lose sight of your question and request. Is there a full application available outside the site so that various staff can work on the application? Currently, the only option is to complete the current section in full before progressing. Unfortunately, there is not a way for you to progress without answering each question. I will say, and I don't know that I would encourage this, if you put some text in the fields, you are able to progress throughout. I would just caution making sure that you're double checking your work throughout the whole application before you hit submit. There's also the application questions that were provided as a part of the RFP. So if you are working from a document outside of the proposal link and then copying into the proposal link, that would be my other recommendation so that you can co-work with other staff. And then not sure if I mentioned it already, what is the supervisor to staff ratio? So specifically at placement sites, there is not a required provider staff to young person ratio if you are not the placement site, right? So we have some programs where provider staff are managing and operating for as few as 25 slots to as many as 60 or 80 slots. But again, for placement site and during the work-based learning and professional development components of C2L PHL, if you're operating internship program, the ratio is 1 supervisor to 10 youth. If you're operating project-based learning or service learning, the ratio is 1 supervisor to 15 youth. And then do we create flyers to promote and share the logos for providers? Yes, there are flyers for C2L PHL in general. And then we are looking to support programs who have their own flyers, making sure that they align with C2L PHL branding. There is a C2L PHL site embedded within phila.gov and C2L PHL website embedded within the JEVS site, which actually takes me directly to, right? All the ways that you can connect with C2L PHL on the internet, right? We've got the JEVS as the intermediary is responsible for managing a social for C2L PHL. So lots of ways to hear about it, get in touch. I would tell you, again, we've got twice as many applicants as we have opportunities. And so finding the young people is not the hard part of this system. Right, y'all, looks like I've made it through the majority of the questions in the chat. Again, we will end up pulling these down and answering them in the publicly posted question and answers as well. That'll end up on the website later this week. This recording will also end up on the website, so you will be able to access all the materials from today's session, watch back as needed. Thank you so much for joining the session. I'm hopeful that I answered most of your questions, provided the information you needed in order to determine if your organization will apply. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.